A homecoming for Damian Lillard that could prove to be an important lesson for Giannis. And our thoughts on the starting small forward. We get into that discussion coming up next on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. You can find me on the Bucks Radio Network. You can hear Camille on the Locked On NBA show weekly and the Technical Foul podcast as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Well, the Damian Lillard saga has apparently come to an end now, Camille, and it was something that we talked about at the time of the waive-and-stretch. I think we both singled out this team as, hey, I hope this is where he ends up, and now it is where he ends up, as the reporting Thursday afternoon, minutes before we recorded this, is that Damian Lillard has agreed to a 3-year contract with the Portland Trailblazers for basically the full mid-level, is what I gather from that. But Dame goes back to Portland. He also gets a no-trade clause. And theoretically, this is where he's going to finish up his career. He posted a video, too, showing this had been in the works for some time and showing his locker with the nameplate and everything else. But I think this was the result that just about every Bucks fan wanted to see.
Yeah, it's far better than him going to like Boston or some other team in the East where you have to see him 4 times a year, where there's been some semblance of a rivalry or beef between the teams before. So Portland, it's a great story. As soon as I saw the news break, I just said, I love this for Dame. Like, I love this so much for him. And again, I appreciated the time he spent here. It reminds me of like when D Wade left Miami for a couple of years, went to Cleveland and Chicago, but it just never quite felt right. But you see the homecoming that D Wade got when he went back to Miami, Wade County, and how all of that looked for him. And it's the same feeling for me seeing Damian Lillard go back to Portland. It's just that the difference is like the pit stop that he took in his career of not being there happened to be in Milwaukee. And there were really high hopes, as I mentioned before, like the duo still was leading scoring duo, Giannis and Dame, in the NBA. And it still felt like there was meat on the bones for that duo to figure out offensively. But I feel like Dame gave everything he had to Milwaukee through some tough situations. So to see him be able to go back home to Portland, and home is all encompassing. Like his family is there, not just his kids, but family he moved out to Portland that made that their home as well. So having that homecoming for him, that's special. And I love that situation for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's Damian Lillard's long-term home is what you get the sense of. I mean, he was even splitting his time. He was spending his off seasons in Portland, still putting on his camp in Portland while he was with the Bucks. And I do think too that the general feeling amongst Bucks fans is that, hey, it didn't work out. It wasn't the pairing that we envisioned it to be. It certainly didn't yield the results that you hoped for, but I got nothing bad to say about Damian Lillard, the work that he put in, the type of player that he was. It's sometimes things just don't work out. So for him to go back to Portland, to be there, to still be around his family, and to get to close your career. You mentioned the comp too to Dwayne Wade, but others that have done similar things where, you'll see guys sign a 1-day contract to retire as a member of the organization. But now Dame gets to close out his career. They've all but said too, he is not going to play this season. He's just going to spend it to rehab. And then it's a 2-year deal for Damian Lillard after that. So you get paid from the Bucks, and now you're getting paid $14 million as well to rehab. I saw his total earnings this year are going to be $70 million. So not bad work if you can get it there for Damian Lillard. It does make a couple of components interesting, and we mentioned like this could be a cautionary tale for a big name for the Bucks. I mentioned this before this offseason, but let's just revisit the trade, as it were, that landed Damian Lillard in Milwaukee. And you look at it from Portland's perspective,
cleaned up.
They got to feel pretty good right about now that the big piece in terms of a player, everybody at the time thought it was DeAndre Ayton. It turned out to be Tumani Kamara, who's still there. Jrue Holiday was a piece in the deal that you ultimately spun off to the Celtics and got the Time Lord. You also got 3 picks or pick swaps from the Bucks, and none of those have taken place yet. So this is the interesting spot where Portland, after a 2-year experiment, gets Damian Lillard back, gets the other point guard he was traded for,
Yep.
and still has a first-round pick and 2 pick swaps coming to them from the Bucks.
Yeah, the first pick swap for Portland and Milwaukee is 2028, and then in 2029, Portland has the Bucks first outright, and then in 2030, it's another pick swap. So, like as you mentioned, those picks haven't even come into fruition yet, and the Trailblazers find themselves in a position to have the guy they traded initially, plus the assets that they received to send him out in the first place. So for Portland, it's a win-win. Like they flipped Holiday initially too out to Boston, as you mentioned, and get Time Lord in and Brogdon and two firsts because they got Golden State's first and the Celtics first through that too. So like to come out with all the picks that they've been able to come out with, and on top of that, I'm not sure when people were watching the Trailblazers, last year, but they're really building something there.
Yeah.
They have some young pieces there, and the defensive identity is really coming together in Portland. And also one of my favorite League Pass watches. I love the presentation that they have for their home games with the stats that they have popping up and everything like that. But yeah, Portland, they came out pretty sweet in this deal. And now my question is not so much for this season because we're expecting Dame to miss this entire season. But when he's healthy, and then you do have Jrue and you have Dame, albeit 2 different types of point guards, both vets on the team that are commanding a large sum of money on a team that's pretty young and have some interesting young pieces to continue to build around. So next offseason, I'll be really interested to see kind of what happens with that guard rotation in Portland.
Yeah, and it makes it all the more interesting to have Damian Lillard and Jrue Holiday on the same team under contract, not going to share the floor together this season, but it makes next season and this upcoming offseason interesting because nobody's going to push back for Dame getting to close his career in Portland and the storybook ending there. But Dame is also kind of playing look, you get to close out your career here and be around your family, but he's the veteran on a young team, which is a role that has already been occupied by Jrue Holiday, and that was part of that trade to initially bring him over. So it has sparked quite a bit of wish casting for Bucks fans, and whether or not we start to see another thing we had talked about earlier in this offseason, maybe a new norm in the NBA. So we'll dig into that discussion and offset language and what the wave and stretch means for the Bucks and see if we have any more clarity on that coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. Well, time to talk to you now about our friends over at Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale. Remember the days when you had to go wait in line at the mall too? Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to worry about those wait times online with Game Time because live music should be about making memories. Those memories should not have to do with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in to eliminate those. They make getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to your showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling and trying to find that best deal, Game Time's Zone Deals. Pick the best seats for you in your section. Maybe you're taking in a venue, a concert, an event, a game at a new venue, and you want to know what that view is going to look like. Well, their app will show you a panoramic seat view, so there's no surprises with that experience. And speaking of no surprises, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees and sticker shock when you get to checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, so what happens with Jrue Holiday? Now, Camille, he's got this year and then 2 more years where
Mhm.
you're already looking at a backcourt that had some promising young pieces. Caleb Love is a two-way player that showed some nice flashes, and I can give you the scouting report on him as an Arizona Wildcat standout. But you've already got Scoot Henderson, who started to piece together some
Mhm.
good play down the stretch, Shaden Sharp as well. And the thought was Jrue Holiday is going to be the vet for those guys to learn from. Well, now you got 2 of them. But one of those vets is making $32 million this year, $34 million next year, and has a player option for $36 million or $37 million, I beg your pardon, the season after that, when, oh, by the way, he's going to turn 37 years old.
Mhm.
Does Jrue Holiday see the end of that contract in Portland?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that having Jrue Holiday on your team at this point is a really good vet to have. He's a phenomenal player. And like I said, I don't think Portland is going to be as bad as some people might initially think of, just like, oh, Portland is still rebuilding. They don't have anything over there. But with where Jrue is in his career as well, even with that being said, I don't necessarily look at Portland as like a championship contender this year. Probably not next year unless, there is some extra like super growth on that roster as well. It's just the West is so stacked. So I could see a situation too where the Trailblazers maybe look to get even more, draft assets and ammunition and use that fact that contenders are going to want Jrue Holiday, although what you get back for him at this age might not be the haul that some might think because of the status of Jrue Holiday. Because as you mentioned, he is aging, and by the end of this contract, he's going to be closer to 40 than he is 35. So it's a tough one, but I don't think that Jrue finishes this contract out in Portland. What about you?
I don't either. I don't know what that means. If there's a trade market for it, I mean, I think one of the more remarkable things was the fact that Boston, the deal they put together there, they did not have to attach any assets to Holiday, which we all kind of raised not one but 2 eyebrows to. And then some of the medical reports came back. I don't want to overdo it, but not so great, where they basically waived getting 2 second-round picks in the deal from Portland. I don't know what the value is. Like, I get the value on the court. And I agree with your point that he's the type of guy that you want to fill that role, to say,
Mhm.
play defense for us, be a vet that helps young guys come along and be in a competitive environment. But that's a lot of money
Yeah.
to take on for a player that's hitting that age, and for a player that, I mean this with all due respect, showed some pretty clear signs of decline the last year with the Celtics. So do we potentially see a wave and stretch there? Like, I know when the Bucks did it, it caught the attention of many. And one thing we didn't touch on yesterday's show was when the Bucks waived and stretched Damian Lillard's 113, whatever it was, $1 million. It was a massive risk. It reeked of desperation,
Yep.
and they did it just to get Miles Turner. And oh, by the way, you got to add Dame's salary essentially to that. So you're paying Miles Turner $50 million. Is that really worth it? When the Suns waived and stretched Bradley Beal, who agreed to give back some more money, so it wasn't quite as much, but still waived and stretched 2 years, it was Phoenix angling and saving some money and getting themselves some breathing room, a much different spin.
It's crazy. It was actually crazy to me when I saw it. Like, I heard KJ mentioned on the Here District, just saying like the Bucks tax is real. Like, like the Bucks get talked about very differently in the media. I never noticed it before, and it's like, yeah, man, welcome to covering the Milwaukee Bucks here. Like, the way that it's been processed is so different. And I mentioned this on the Eurostep podcast. Shout out to Ty for having me on. But like, I think on top of that too, like Miles Turner was seen as the best free agent acquisition that you could possibly get after how many different players already re-signed already were off the market. And I think that Miles Turner in particular is like uniquely suited to play next to Giannis. Like, it's a perfect fit next to Giannis. So for the Bucks, you value that player even more than another team might, just because like of the fit that he is next to Giannis, being able to stretch the floor, protect the rim. All of that is a benefit. So yeah, I definitely peeped how different it was for the Suns when they were able to, waive and stretch Brad Beal after the buyout situation, in comparison to how it was for the Bucks to do this with the Dame contract, of just the desperation that the Bucks must have had in this moment. But we ain't new to this, Justin. We're true to this. We know how it goes in the media when it comes to covering the Bucks.
Yeah, it was interesting. And in fairness, Brian Windhorst was the one national voice I did not see use the same tone of, wow, this is a smart move by Phoenix versus desperate move for the Bucks. That he was pretty across the board, same logic for both of those teams. So shouts to our guy, Windy. But I don't know. I know when the Bucks did that, I had said, I'm not saying every single team is going to do this, but I do wonder if one of the changes ushered in with this new CBA and teams finally kind of coming to grips with the aprons and the impacts that those have and how you have to round out your roster is, do we start to see more of this like you see in the NFL where you're dealing with cap hits and dead money? Are you going to see more teams do it? Well, the Suns have done it. Do the Blazers maybe eventually do it with Damian Lillard with Jrue Holiday in those final 2 years on that contract where you're waiving and stretching what would be $71 million? Like
over 5.
Are we gonna see teams start to say, yeah, 2-year deals, 2 years left on the deal. If he's no longer productive, let's just bite the bullet and stretch those contracts.
I think there's quite a possibility. Like, you see one team do something, and after you kind of consider okay,
it just means it's okay for you to do it.
Exactly. You just need the first team to do it, and the Bucks were already like, we're gonna bite this bullet. Let's go ahead and see what this does for us. And it opened up all the cap room for the Bucks to the point where we had the questions, and seeing the questions of like, wait, what happened to the Bucks MLE? Like, don't the Bucks still have the BA? And it's like, they're just a cap space team now at this point. So those methods are out the door for the Bucks to build the roster, and they just have the room to do it. And I could see other teams following suit, especially because it seems like you are seeing more guys just extend. Like, you get your money and you understand, like, you don't have to necessarily test free agency. You can just demand a trade. And I think that we are going to continue to see more trades just come about rather than guys hitting the market and going from there, because it's like, if I can get my money now, I can get my money, and I know I can find a way out if I need a way out. Might not need to, but if I do, I can. So I think that's part of what we're going to continue to see as well.
I think free agency is dying a slow death, and the movement is trades. And I do think you're going to see more wave and stretch going on. And in cases where you maybe don't want to jump in that pool just yet, you'll trade your problem and bad contract for another problem and bad contract. And, we talked about on yesterday's show, the John Horst interview with Eric Name, where you read between the lines, and it was basically John Horst telling us, yeah, we were moving on from Dame. Like, this wasn't anything that, we got a chance at Miles Turner. Like, they targeted that, and the way to get there was they knew they were going to wave and stretch Damian Lillard. He did not bluntly say that, but I think if you read between the lines, that was the gist of it. That was my takeaway, at least. And you do wonder if the Bucks were just kind of waiting to see, okay, we've heard the same, and Gambo out of Phoenix was the first to report Bradley Beal's not going to be on the team next year, either a trade or they'll waive him. You do kind of wonder, like, were they just waiting and seeing, okay, are they going to do it? Are they going to do it first so we can be the next team to do it or not? And maybe it was a game of chicken between the Bucks and the Suns then.
It possibly could have been at that point, because it was kind of like the Spider-Man meme of like both pointing of like, I know what you want to do. You know what I want to do. Like, neither one of us want this anymore, but Bradley Beal was clearly like, I'm gonna get paid. And that's what I care about. I'm getting paid along the way here. So that's just how it ended up shaking out for him. But to double back to the trade point of how that's going forward, even in that article with Horst and mentioning the fact of like, I still plan to be very active in assessing the team needs. Like, just because we're done now doesn't mean we're done. Like, I think it can be a very active trade line for the Bucks as well. He did say, like, of course, if things are going swimmingly well, there's not necessarily a need to, but just understanding that John Horst will make a move if he feels like this is not working out in the way that they want to, because clearly, again, they're all in. They're chasing championships. It's not a gap year for this team. They think they can really compete with the pieces that they have around them. And I mean, they have a shot for sure. They have a shot for sure.
Yeah. Let's stick with this. So we'll step aside here, but we wanted to talk about the small forwards. You had that conversation with Ty on the Eurostep podcast. You mentioned KJ as well, and KJ is going to rejoin us on the show next week. So we're still ironing out the date there. So be on the lookout for that one. I do want to get to the starting small forward discussion that you had with Ty on the show yesterday, but I want to finish one last point on the Jrue Holiday discussion. So we'll get into that coming up next. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need. Maybe you needed a plumber at the last minute. If the first one you called didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on down the list. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. It lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app. They offer a shared inbox feature, which proves to be a game changer, as your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And they utilize AI with an agent that handles after hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off for your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. So let's just rip this Band-Aid off, Camille, since it's the next logical talking point, and we've already seen a ton of it. Let's say the Portland Trail Blazers waive and stretch Damian Lillard, or I keep saying that, Jrue Holiday.
They're always connected now.
Now that they have Damian Lillard, let's say they waive and stretch Jrue Holiday. Should the Bucks go after him?
Listen, we had a conversation, I can't remember, yesterday, the day before, about the Chris Paul to the Bucks and what that meant for Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. and playing time for the young guys and the fit. And I mentioned I don't really want too many guys on the team that are older than Giannis, and I still feel very strongly about that. But Jrue Holiday is one of those guards where, if it is a buyout situation, the contract is a lot cheaper too, to come back to Milwaukee. The fact that he can play the defense that he can play, we know for a fact that he can be that combo guard for the Bucks. And the role that he would walk back into in this iteration of the team would be different than the role he had to play prior. That actually does pique my interest a bit more. Like, Jrue Holiday is one of the few guys I would go against what my guidelines have been so far of like what I want from the Bucks. Just because I think that he can be very valuable with the defense. He can play the mentorship, and just to come back in a different role. Like, part of the reason why Jrue was out in the first place was he was being asked to be the second leading offensive weapon for the team, in addition to locking down the other team's best, offensive weapon. And it was just a lot on his plate there. And his role in Boston, where he was able to play that defense, would be, the fourth, sometimes fifth option on the court, was different. And I think that if it's an offense where Giannis is running point here, and you have the off-ball movement, you have guys spotting up, it's a bit more suitable for Jrue as he continues to age too than what was being asked of him before in Milwaukee.
It's complicated for me. This hypothetical move would not happen until next offseason because, as we said, Dame's not going to play this year. So they still want Jrue to fill that role. And they still need a third guard this upcoming season. So you would then be looking at a 6-year-old Jrue Holiday. I think you could, play him at the 3, basically, with 2 guards back there, and Jrue takes on those defensive assignments. But the 36 years old part is what I'm struggling with. And here's the other thing, too. Everybody, when we were guilty of it too, when you're kind of talking yourself into Bradley Beal and saying, well, on a minimum, you can't go wrong, right? Which is true. But we're not seeing those guys waived and stretched signed for minimums. And we talked about this with Dame too at the time of he could take a minimum and go join a contender and go anywhere by taking the minimum. And we both said, yes, in theory, but I'll believe it when I see him take the minimum, because it's one thing to get waived and stretched and the connotations that brings and the scarlet letter almost of like, this guy's washed and it's over. But then you double down and sign for the minimum, like that's it. You're not, especially at that age, you're not getting much more after that. So I don't see, even if this becomes more common with waive and stretch, I don't see those guys signing for minimums. And if that's the case with the age of Jrue Holiday, I think it would just, I get it, the nostalgia and how important Jrue Holiday was 4 years ago today on the day that we record this in basically securing you a championship and being, outside of Giannis and Chris, as big as anyone in terms of big plays in that playoff run. But you got to start looking through the windshield and not in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, and that's part of why I've said, like, my position for the offseason is like, go young. Like, don't get the vets in, let the young guys get their playing time. It's just Jrue Holiday. He has a special place in the heart here. And again, like, it would take away from minutes to some of those young guards who I would want to see continue to develop. But the flip side to that is, like, a lot of the guys signed 1-on-1 deals, player options. What if it's a situation where this season someone really pops and the Bucks aren't able to actually retain them and they actually decide to go somewhere else? What if Kevin, what if they're like, you know what? I'm actually going to be out of here now. Like, the 1-year deal was cool. I'm going to decline this player option. And now I'm going to go out here and try to find something different. Like, a little stopgap Jrue Holiday could work, especially to understanding that the way the Bucks want to play, faster perimeter defense, moving your feet, Jrue can still do all of those things. So at least for me, the difference between like him and a Chris Paul, where it's like your role, I can see you fitting into what the Bucks want to do. Chris Paul brings a different flavor and all of it together of being that floor general there. So Jrue was one of the guys I would have an exception for sure. But I definitely understand the logic of not going that way. And if they didn't, I wouldn't be upset if they continued to lean into the youth.
Yeah. Look, if that happens, first of all, we have no reason to believe it's going to happen. And it's certainly not going to happen this off season. That happens, great. By all means, I'd love to have Jrue Holiday back here on a veteran minimum. And that's all the Bucks could offer him this offseason anyway. But we'll see. The next player that takes a minimum contract after a waive and stretch will be the first player. So we'll see how that shakes out. We should also mention too, Frank talked about this. Frank tweeted something out. The impacts on the waive and stretch of Dame signing a new contract with the Portland Trail Blazers. Bobby Marks put something out there as well, Camille. And I gotta be honest here. I'm more confused than ever reading through, and it's not a knock on Bobby, but he lists out every single thing of here's the money that was waived and stretched. It was done over this many years. It means it's this many dollars per year. Here's the new contract that Dame signed. Because his contract is greater than the minimum, $2 million, because remember the league supplements the minimum for veterans, it gets offset. And the formula for offsetting that is you take the base year pay minus the minimum amount, divide that in half, and that's what you come up with. So it's $11.65 million over these 2 seasons that is being offset in the money that the Bucks have waived and stretched for Damian Lillard. So as he notes, subtract $2.3 million from the stretched amount each season in Milwaukee. This will happen after the 25-26 regular season. So it doesn't go into effect now. It happens at the end of the offseason next year. And the revised stretch provision would be $20.2 million. It's my understanding that's not like a cap benefit for the Bucks. It's more to do with what they're paying him. I asked Bobby for some confirmation on that. We're still waiting to hear, but you're going to see a lot of, well, the Bucks are saving money here. And I mean, they're saving money. The owners are. But in terms of your cap,
Yeah.
I'm led to believe there's no impact here.
That's what my understanding of it was as well, where it's like if the Bucks were in a tax situation at the end of the year, this comes into play big time because it's another $2 million that's going to be off your books. I have seen numbers as high as 5 so far with people trying to figure out what that benefit for the Bucks is. But ultimately, my understanding is that it doesn't provide any actual like salary cap team building relief. So when you're looking at numbers and what the Bucks can offer, it doesn't give you an extra $2 million to play with in that sense. It just gives you some extra money at the back end there, which can save on some tax dollars, like you mentioned, save the owners some money down the stretch here.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get some more clarity on that in the next day or so here. We intended to talk about the starting small forward. We're already running up against the clock, so we'll save that and spend some more time on it next week. And we mentioned as well a couple of things to look forward to next week. That discussion, we'll put a recap on Summer League. Frank is going to hop on the pod and share his thoughts on what we saw. Hopefully there's a miraculous recovery as you listen to this on Friday, and Mark Sears is good to go, and we can at least see one game of Mark Sears in Summer League. But we'll have the recap of Summer League on the show next week. We'll take a look at the starting small forward debate. And I mentioned as well, Chris Johnson's going to join us once again next week to share his thoughts on the offseason and the overall perception of the Milwaukee Bucks. Leave your thoughts in the comments. The hypothetical, would you take back Jrue Holiday for the next couple of years? And what would be, I'd say what would be the walkaway figure, but all the Bucks can offer right now is a minimum contract. So could this round of musical chairs mean these two guys end up where they originally were a couple of years ago? Final Summer League game later on today for the Bucks, and then it's on to the weekend. Camille and I will be back next week to break down Summer League, take a look at some more positional battles, and again, a couple more interviews coming up as well. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk once again next week on Locked On Bucks.